Manchester City has become the world's most valuable football brand, ending Real Madrid's 4-year streak. The City FC brand value is up by 13%, going to 1.5 billion euro, achieving, well, an historic move, of course, in removing the likes of Madrid. Joining you now, but in fact, you don't have to believe me with this, because this man, though, believe me, you have to believe him. His name is David Wingfield, Head of Business Development in Brand Africa. In fact, previously, he was known in South Africa. He was at the Premier Soccer League. ABSA is where the brand that helped, well, that ran the Premier Soccer League. David, welcome to SABC News Channel and Sports Live. Thank you for joining us. When you speak of the top 50 brands, Man City, I guess they deserve it, especially after winning the Champions League as well last night. It was bound to happen.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they are. They took over as the world's most valuable football brand, and this ranking we did before the Champions League final. So I hazard a guess their value might have increased a little bit more over the last 48 or 24 hours after last night's 1-0 win against Inter. But yeah, they are now the world's most valuable football brand, and they took that position from Real Madrid, who have been for the last few years the world's #1 brand. So a very, very good performance by them, and really probably led by the fact that they have gone as far as, when we did this ranking, as far as they had already been in the Champions League, and the fact that they were about to win their 3rd Premier League title. So it does make sense. The way we calculate it is we look at broadcast revenue of these clubs. We look at their commercial revenue, which is their sponsors, etc. We look at their revenue, their attendance, their gate revenue, and then we look at the size of their fan base. We look at their performance on the pitch. And you know, and those kind of factors, and we work out what the world's most valuable brands is. So there, yeah. So Manchester City are in fact the world's most valuable brand in 2023, as football goes, anyway.
Yeah. Me and you, we don't like Man City a lot. I know you and I have got the pain of being Arsenal fans, but today we'll discuss that on another day over a cold one. Let's speak about the differential, or the two categories they are here: the brand of being, you know, football or the club, and also the monetary value. Are those two interlinked, or can you have be a bigger brand and not necessarily be the richest, so to speak? How do you go about working out the permutations of what we're speaking about tonight?
So obviously, I mean, the way we calculate how valuable a brand is that we first work out. I mean, it's quite a complicated financial calculation, but the long and the short of it, we work out how strong the brand is. So we do an evaluation on the brand, and we work out how strong the brand is, and we call that the brand strength index. We then multiply that by some factors, including what their future projected revenue is, which we then discount to a net present value, but that's not important for the purposes of that. And then we get a brand value. Now, it is possible to be a very strong brand, but because you aren't massive financially or otherwise, you may not be the most valuable, but you may be the strongest. And interestingly enough, from a brand strength point of view, Real Madrid is in fact still the strongest brand, football brand, the strongest brand. Liverpool is 2nd, Barcelona 3rd, and so on and so on. And Manchester City, in fact, is only 5th. They're up from 6th. But financially, when you start adding their financial performance onto the equation, they become the football's most valuable brand. So, in fact, a very easy example in banking in South Africa, people will very understand this. A brand like Capitec is a spectacularly strong brand, but because of the size of them relative to a standard bank, they are not as valuable as. Much stronger brand, but not as valuable simply because of size. So that is how we calculate it. But so, yeah, the world's strongest brand is in fact still Real Madrid, as I said, followed by Liverpool and Barcelona, but they are not the world's most valuable brand. Yeah,
I mean, I'm looking at, we have on screen as you speak, you know, the top 1 to 10 in as far as what that, you know, financially it looks like. And the amounts are staggering. I mean, $1 couple gazillion billion. as a layman, I don't think you can fathom how much money that is. Now, the question that I wanted to ask you, David, is it because of the strength of the owner of the particular club, like in inverted commas, for example, City, we know that the owners, it's Saudi Arabian money or, UAE money, or is it a case of this is money that, the players are worth in as far as the whole squad? Because one could say, once again, it's not just cut and dry.
So obviously, into that calculation will go the size of the squad and the value of that squad. So obviously, when you get into those numbers, you end up with clubs like Manchester City and Madrid, who obviously, they have these really big squads and they are worth a lot of money. So that obviously factors into the brand value calculation. But it is worth noting that there's also a difference between the enterprise value. In other words, what is the total organization worth? So in Manchester City's case, they also happen to be from an enterprise. In other words, the total business, all of their tangible assets as well, the stadium, all of that stuff, they're actually a $4.1 billion euro business. The brand, which is essentially the intangible asset, which you could put on their balance sheet, is 1.5 billion. Yeah. So whilst the business is worth that, the tangible piece is only, in fact, 3 billion euro, and 1.5 billion is essentially in the minds of people what this thing is worth because they perform and because people follow them, because people are passionate about them, So that's what we look at.
Yeah. As I said, top 10 looks good for me. Arsenal way ahead of Tottenham and Chelsea, so I'm happy about that. Let's go to bottom 10 quickly, because I think there's also big brands there, big teams in the bottom, 10 of this list. And yet again, it just shows you how big European football is in as far as South Africa is concerned anyway, because as much as we enjoy our Kaizer Chiefs, our Orlando Pirates, these teams, Juve, your Borussia Dortmunds, your Inters, your ACs, even for me, I think West Ham was interestingly there, as well as Newcastle, and right there at the bottom, Aston Villa. For me, it speaks of the volume and how much money European football is.
So obviously, look, in order to in particular to survey fans, etc., the truth is we survey Europe, US, and China simply because it's a very, very big exercise to do everywhere else. But the reality is when it comes down to money, the only club in the top 50 that is not in Europe is in fact the Brazilian club Flamengo. So that's the only one that is outside of Europe. Obviously, Kaizer Chiefs, Pirates, Sundowns in this country, it would be a very interesting exercise to do. And somewhere on my screen, I see Sandile Zungu, who I haven't spoken to. Well, it would be a very interesting exercise to do for South Africa, but it is a very expensive thing to do. So the top 50, obviously all of the big leagues in Europe are in it. The Premier League in Europe, as a matter of interest, is the most valuable league by some margin now. La Liga is second, and La Liga, in fact, have just actually rebranded in the past couple of weeks. I don't know if anybody noticed that.
And it's making a lot of inroads in South Africa as well. It's making a lot of inroads in South Africa, La Liga.
Yeah, so La Liga is doing very, very well, but it still lags the Premier League. And the Premier League goes from strength to strength and has for some time now. The biggest loser, although they're still third, they are sliding, is the Bundesliga. They are sliding, and then they are followed by Serie A, and then obviously Ligue 1. But having said that, what's interesting is that the biggest gainers in brand value in the past year were actually both La Liga clubs, whilst their value is smaller in terms of where they find themselves in the total ranking. AC Milan is only 15th, but they were actually the biggest climbers in brand value, and next was Napoli. And largely due to the one Napoli winning from nowhere with a brand of football that everybody wanted to watch, winning Serie A. Yeah. But and obviously AC Milan doing as well as they had in last year's Serie A, and actually going as far as they have in the Champions League. So they've done really, really well. The biggest gainer of the English clubs is Newcastle. It's to be expected, just in terms of from almost nowhere to like hero.
Yeah.
So they've done really well. So it's interesting. And the biggest fallers in brand change over the past years, in fact, been Leicester City of the top 50. Leicester City, but and again, you know, they've now been relegated. So performance has a lot to do with it because the revenues that come with that are significant.
Yeah. David Wingfield, thank you very much indeed for speaking to us here on SABC News Channel. Sheesh, we can go on all night about this. It's quite an interesting one. Head of Business Development at Brand Finance Africa.